60 episodes of 10 Years Later down. Honestly, I'm impressed with myself for even being able to keep up with this series right now, given everything that's gone on with me this year. But here we are, so let's just keep on going. Welcome back to 10 Years Later, the series where I talk about albums from the 2010s that were either impactful to me, impactful to music in general, very popular, or just worth revisiting 10 years later for good or bad reasons. And as you can tell from the title, the album that we'll be talking about today is the 2011 Demi Lovato record, Unbroken. This was the third studio album from the Disney Channel star turned pop superstar Demi Lovato, and this record was a major switch up in their career. It was their first album after their camp rock days, and it was one of the earliest moments of them working to make something more mature. It was one of the first times we saw Demi start to shed away that Disney Channel skin and turn themselves into an artist that existed independently from what they once did with Disney. This isn't the first time I've talked about a record like this in this series. In many ways, this kind of feels like for Demi what Can't Be Tamed was for Miley Cyrus back in 2010, in that they were both attempts for former Disney Channel stars to establish themselves with a more mature image. I really enjoy a lot of Demi's recent music, so I was interested in digging back into their previous catalog, even if this album boasted a robust 15-track, 52-minute length. And at times I think that can show. Demi even described this as being generic, and they've notably had mixed feelings on it, and I could certainly see why. To get some of the lesser moments out of the way first, All Night Long kicks off the album with this big booming bassy instrumental that was produced by none other than Timbaland. It feels a bit old school with a bass groove that almost reminds me of a classic Britney Spears song. Demi's vocals have some power even if the song doesn't really take enough time to explore them or let them shine. It's a fun, flashy little pop tune, but one that probably won't stand as tall as some of Demi's bests. Damn it all, does Missy Elliott kill it on the song though, as one would reasonably expect from the Queen. Who's That Boy features some vocal contributions from California singer Dev, who raps through her verses and honestly comes through with some very catchy flows. She very much feels like the highlight of the song for me though. The beat is one of the many bright bubblegummy electronic instrumentals that was around in the early 2010s. I can't put my finger on which one, but it has a sound of some of Nicki Minaj's popular tracks from her debut album Pink Friday. And Demi obviously can sing wonderfully, but the song kind of washes them out with some of the auto-tune and the filters, and I think that combined with the production, it makes this feel like a slightly fun but otherwise average relic from the early 2010s. You're My Only Shorty was honestly an interesting track to read about, as apparently the song was originally recorded by Ariana Grande and set to be on her debut album. Turns out it was then sold to Demi by producer Rock Mafia. I wish the actual track was a bit more interesting to listen to though. Beyond its typical electronic beat, when this one started I thought it reminded me a lot of Fergalicious. I wouldn't be comparing so many of these songs to other artists or styles, but I think the reason I bring it up is to highlight some of Demi's own thoughts on the album. From retrospective comments, it sounds like even they weren't entirely sure how to feel about the record, and I think some of these instances of Demi wearing their influences on their sleeves show that they were still trying to find some sense of direction. The vocals are mostly good outside of that auto-tune, though I didn't really care all that much for Ayaz on the chorus. The title track, Unbroken, is another one of those electronic, bassy, reverby types of cuts with these light moments that sound like a retro video game. Demi comes through with the occasional catchy vocal melody, even if the filters still mess with their voice a bit, but I felt like this was another one of those songs that I couldn't see as anything other than emblematic of the sound and style of the early 2010s. Ditto for Hold Up. Right from the start, where the electronic production swells and kind of swooshes in, I knew the song was going to feel like it was just doing what a lot of other tracks were doing at the time of this record's release, and it did. Demi does everything they humanly can with the instrumental, but it's just very forgettable. Mistake centers a bit around pianos, and I mentioned this comparison earlier, but this sounds to me like quite a few of the poppy Nicki Minaj singles from that early period of the 2010s. Demi has more than enough vocal power to make the song compelling, and I think they definitely sound very lovely and add to the emotional vibe. I wish the instrumental was a bit more compelling, as it again just feels very standard to me, though the song is still decent if not one of the bests here. There are quite a few moments I really like though. Together is one of those tracks that works thanks to its much more mellow, lovely production that's largely comprised of some light strums and a smooth beat. I really enjoyed Demi's vocals, as the producers thankfully took some of the filters off and let their voice shine for itself, and I think Jason Derulo does a very nice job as well. The song has this inspirational message about togetherness and loving thy neighbor, and I think it definitely works nicely. Light Lightweight is easily one of the most emotional songs on the album. Demi really bears their feelings and emotions in what is a slightly orchestral ballad with a doo-wop twist to it. Demi is perfectly fit for this kind of sound, and once again I think the restrained style allows their vocals to be a bit more unfiltered, allowing their power to shine through. It's an early example of Demi making a very mature kind of track. Fix a Heart succeeds once again largely because it strips things down a lot. It's just Demi and a piano along with a bit of orchestral influence, and these are the types of cuts that they can absolutely dominate. No need for trendy, big production or filters that wash them out, just let Demi sing their heart out unfiltered. The results are pretty damn good. The track in a very good way almost reminds me of a lighter version of Breakaway by Kelly Clarkson. There's a lot of emotion to it and it's pretty beautiful. Give Your Heart a Break is the one track from this record I've listened to a lot of. Even though Skyscraper was the bigger single, this was the first Demi Lovato song that I really enjoyed, and to this day it's still probably one of my favorites from Demi. It's one of the few bigger tracks here that really succeeds to me, and that's largely because it still taps into some emotional vibes. And the instrumental knows when to alternate between toning things down and getting bigger. Demi's vocals are also fantastic, and they craft what is easily one of the most memorable hooks in their career. Skyscraper was the album's biggest single, and it was one of the most emotional singles Demi had put out at the time. Lyrically, it dives into a lot of the pain Demi was in at the time when they were in rehab and dealing with their self-harm and eating disorder. This was a song I had heard in passing a few times, but I didn't listen to it fully until listening to the album for this video. It's the type of track that works for a lot of the same reasons many of the album's other highlights do. Demi is given a light piano and minimal beat to work with, and they absolutely dominate it. There are points throughout where Demi's voice sounds like it's cracking through, obviously because this is some very difficult stuff to talk about, and it makes for one of Demi's most beautiful songs. I always applaud their ability to be so forthcoming and raw about their struggles, and this song perfectly embodies that. Though I'm not as crazy about the Wisdom remix that closes the album. Wisdom implements some slightly bigger instrumentation here and thankfully doesn't go too heavy with it. I saw a remix at the end and was worried we'd be getting a full electronic remix, beat drop and all. This isn't that, and I do appreciate how Wisdom respected the original song and its subject matter when crafting the remix. It's just that I prefer the original version's stripped down atmosphere a bit more. In Real Life is an attempt at something a little bit more fun that tries to be the least awkward transition possible after following up on the extremely emotional Skyscraper. Fortunately, it's not that awkward and it is actually pretty solid. The instrumental feels like it has this pluckiness between its pianos and guitars, and Demi's vocals are very charismatic. I don't know why I get Panic at the Disco vibes from this one, but I do enjoy those sounds. The hook did take a minute to grow on me, but while it changes its feel heavily into something a bit sunnier, I think it is very pleasant and likable. My Love Is Like a Star is another down-tempo ballad about love with a spacey, somewhat ethereal, old-school sounding instrumental that almost feels like what you'd hear during a slow dance at a wedding. As you'd expect, Demi's vocals are perfect for this style, and I think the song is a wonderful showcase of their soul and power, making this quite a lovely cut. And For the Love of a Daughter is another extremely heart-clenching cut where Demi delves into their relationship with their late biological father and the abuse that he inflicted on them as well as their mother. The song serves as an impassioned plea for him to put down the bottle for the sake of his child. As you'd expect, this is also a piano ballad where Demi gets as emotional and vulnerable as they've probably ever been on a record. I love the broken emotional vocals from Demi, who really bears it all but does so in a very mature, stunning way. It could not have been easy to write a song like this, but they did a wonderful job. And as the last proper song on the album, they couldn't have picked a better note to end on. Overall, while I don't find this album to be bad at all, I think Demi's mixed feelings with the record are not totally unfounded. I think there are definitely some very good moments on the record, and Demi proved to be an excellent singer even at the time. Obviously, yes, there were a few moments where some filters might have washed out their voice and they might not immediately sound as developed as they do now, though I chalk that up more to Demi being 17, 18, maybe 19 when this was recorded. Regardless, they sound great and they can make a lot of the emotional jams really work. I think my issue is not them, but rather the production they were given to work with. Several moments on here feel like dated relics from the early 2010s, almost seeming to indicate that even Demi didn't really know where they wanted to take their sound at the time. Thus, with an album of this many tracks, there are several big highs, but also quite a few noteworthy lows. All in all, I definitely don't think it's a bad album, but I understand why even Demi might have some qualms about it. Back in 2011, my lack of interest in pop music might have stopped me from liking this album, even though I did enjoy Give Your Heart a Break. Listening to it now, I see why Demi isn't all that crazy about it, though I don't think it's bad. If I had to put it on my scale, I'd probably give it an okay rating. It could lean a bit towards good, but I think I'd go go with okay. There are quite a few tracks I like, but equally a number of them do sound a bit dated and can feel like relics of yesteryear. But that's just my opinion on this album. What did you guys think about it? Did you listen to it back in 2011? Do you still listen to it now? Did you love it back then? Hate it back then? Do you still love it now? Do you still hate it now? Are you just completely indifferent towards it? Whatever your thoughts and opinions are, leave them down in the comments below. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe and support some of my other ventures that I have linked in the description, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. And I'll probably do this next video in another session because I'm really tired and it's hot in this room, so I don't want to continue recording at the moment. But my next September 10 years later video is going to be on Blink-182's Neighborhoods. Hopefully that ought to be a fun one, so stay tuned for that. But until then, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.